This is my favorite cybernite. This is Hank. Hank is an inspiration to me, and I'm going to take a moment and tell you Hank's story. I live in a little farming community, what was a farming community, now becoming a bedroom community, about 45 minutes outside of Toronto. Hank used to run a store. In this community, he sold lawn tractors and snowblowers. For those of you from the north, a snowblower is a mechanical device. And he had a big repair shop, service shop out the back of this store, and he fought with everybody else for the contracts from the parks departments and the landscaping companies. And what happened to Hank is some of the big box stores moved into town and got into the lawn tractor and snowblower business, and they were selling these things for less money than Hank could buy them for. Now, I don't know whether or not Hank has an MBA, but Hank was able to look at this piece of information and say to himself, strategically, I have a long-term problem here. And what fascinates me with all of these things, and I'll use some examples from some companies, and some of them I'll say, here's a smart thing they did. It may be the only smart thing they did. But what fascinates me is when somebody does something different than what everybody else does. And in these circumstances, what normally happens? There's wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth and crying in beer and letters to the MPs and parking lot protests against the evil big box store. And they hang on and hang on and hang on, and eventually they lose the store. What Hank did is he sat back and said, faced with radically transforming market conditions, how do I reconceptualize the delivery mechanism for my business? How do I redefine the unique value proposition and leverage the capital investment base I have in order to recreate a new mechanism of forming different relationships with the customers I have to circumvent and take advantage of the unique competitive advantage I can create for myself? No. I suspect those were not the kind of words Hank actually used. Hank said what many of the boardrooms say before we go make the public announcements. Holy shit, what am I going to do? Here's how I met Hank. That's my lawn tractor, that little red thing up there. Lawn tractor breaks. Neighbors say to me, you got to phone Hank. I pick up the phone. Nice lady answers the phone. I hear tippy-tappy on the keyboard. Hank rolls into my place with this. What Hank did is sold the business while he still could, spent 3 months doing some amazing engineering bits, and put a service facility in the back of a horse trailer. He put an extra couple of phone lines in his house, bought some scheduling software, and then he went to the parks departments and the landscaping companies and said to them, I know one of your issues is every 10 days you need to take every machine you own out of the field for the day to take it in and get it serviced. How about if I show up and do it at lunch? Made more money he's ever made. He's actually given up the business now. He's off to be a missionary, which was his life's calling. The whole neighborhood bereft of the exercise. Doesn't change the hours he works, but it changed who controlled the hours he worked. And the reason Hank is my favorite cybernite is if this guy can reconceptualize his whole business model, faced with overwhelming, huge competition, surely the folks sitting in this room can do the same kind of thing.
The way these people function and the way they grow their business, they live or die by their personal reputation on a day-to-day basis. Part of this groundswell demand we're seeing and all this governance issues we've got going on and so on is the fact that we have gone from hundreds of thousands of the traditional old line professions into millions who live or die by their own reputation. Thus, back to some of the transparency. It is my perception that what you are actually like to do business with is becoming your brand. Never mind what the marketing and the advertising and the rest of it says. I think all organizations have personalities, just like people do. You know this. We talk about organizations as if they were a person. Part of that transparency issue and part of the you don't own your brand anymore. Your brand is the conversation that's going on with others about what it's like to do business with you.
We have moving from an age of activity into an age of results. Seismic shift. Management used to be a very simple thing in a day and age when I could look at somebody and determine whether or not they were being productive. If you're leaning on your shovel, you weren't being productive. You're sitting at the keyboard, your fingers aren't moving, you're not being productive. Management was a relatively easy thing. I hired people to watch people to see if they were being productive. If they weren't being productive, go over, poke them with a stick. They were overseers. In fact, they literally were. We thought the term was harsh. We went to the Latin. We call them supervisors. We are in a day and age now where you can't look at somebody and see if they're being productive. In a day where innovation and networks and connections and creative thinking and new approaches is the capital that's going to move the business forward, we're in an age now where what we're saying is, here's what I need accomplished. Within these parameters, here's what I need done. And quite frankly, I don't care where you do it, when you do it, how you do it, who you do it with. Here's what we need done. Here's what we pay for those results. I could launch into a whole piece of our education system, our healthcare systems around the developed world, all working towards fundamentally the same kind of exercise.